Max Pacioretty makes his debut with the Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holney. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, Max Pacioretty makes his debut with the Capitals. It's pretty exciting for me. I was pretty excited to see what he looks like on the ice. I know I've seen the back of his hockey card. I know what the potential is there. What can we expect from Max Pacioretty, and what did we see from him tonight? We'll talk about that in the show. A little bit later, we will talk about how Evgeny Kuznetsov came to life tonight, as he was in a bit of a drought, but he was really turning it on this evening. But just to get it going here, we will talk about the Capitals as they fall to the Devils tonight. And historically, the Capitals have always done good in the second game of a back-to-back. And, I'm going to go ahead and say it was still a pretty good game. Obviously, they didn't get the desired result that they were looking for, but they were scoring a lot of goals. There was a lot of offensive opportunities, but ultimately it was some botched plays. It was some miscues, and I would say that it wasn't Hunter Shepard's best game that he's played as a Capital. Those are all things that contributed to the Capitals' loss, and to give credit where credit's due, that is a really good, young, and fast Devils team. I was very impressed with what I saw out on the ice by the Devils. I think that they have a potential of being a really good team, but they really kind of threw the kitchen sink at the Capitals. Capitals being the second oldest team in the NHL, you could kind of see certain things come into focus as some of the players on the Devils were very quick. Their one Achilles heel is net minding. They've struggled with net minding, but other than that, they're a pretty good team, and I could see them doing very well this season. But just to get it going here, kind of talking about the game and what went right and what went wrong. The Caps have played very well, like I said, on the back-to-backs. But tonight, they struggled, obviously, as they didn't get the result they were looking for. The Devils are fast and young and know how to score 5-on-5 and are one of the best teams on the power play. Their one weakness is in net, like I spoke of there. There were moments of promise when the Capitals tied the game, but that didn't last long, and the Devils would regain the lead. There were some moments when I watched this game that I thought the Caps were going to get back into it. When they tied the game, I'm like, here we go. Let's go. It keeps rolling. When I saw Connor McMichael score that goal and Kuzi, there were, a lot of moments in there that gave me hope that this team was going to be able to turn it around and pick up a big win. Nico Hischier got it going for the Devils to start the game. Luke Hughes, big names. I mean, if you are not a fan of, teams other than the Capitals, go ahead and circle those names as just names to look for that are huge around the NHL. Luke Hughes scored next, and the Devils were humming. And that was the big thing. Particularly in the first period, and then as the game went on as well, is momentum, and their speed and their playmaking is what came into focus. And the thing that was really impressive for me that I saw about the Devils was them on the power play. That is a well-oiled machine that they have going up there in New Jersey. Dawson Mercer put the Devils up 3-1. Mercer and McLeod, would strike again in the third for the Dagger. McLeod. So just watching the game, there were some bright spots in there. Of course, I thought the Capitals did a lot of good things as well. And like I talked about, Connor McMichael scoring his 7th goal of the season on the power play to cut the Capitals deficit to 2-1. It marks McMichael's first career power play goal. And I think that he is as advertised, Connor McMichael. If you are an everydayer of the show, you know how I said that this has got to be the year for Connor McMichael. And look how that's paid off for the Capitals. I think that he has knocked it out of the park. I think that, and he's still growing. His game is still growing. And it's interesting if, maybe he would have been this player last year had the Capitals given him a longer look. But in any event, this year, I love what I'm seeing from Connor McMichael, and I think that we can expect to see his game continue to grow. I don't think that we've even seen the tip of the iceberg as far as what Connor McMichael has. Rasmus Sandin recorded the primary assist on McMichael's goal, his 11th assist of the season. Sandin, who recorded his 8th career multi-assist game last night in Pittsburgh, has recorded 5 assists in his last 5 games. Rasmus Sandin, don't just call him a blue liner. He is a guy that gets involved in the offense as well. So he has some offensive flair. And just, the good thing about Rasmus Sandin is you are seeing how good he's playing now, but he is that future piece that the Capitals were looking for on the blue line. That is why they went all in last season to obtain him. But a really great game for him. Anthony Mantha earned his secondary assist on McMichael's power play goal, his 7th assist of the season. Anthony Mantha continues to do great things. If he's not finding the back of the net, he's getting involved in assists and making some great plays. I do want to see Anthony Mantha back on the score sheet for goals scored. I mean, he was on a tear there for a while. I want to see more production as far as goal scoring from Anthony Mantha, because Lord knows this team needs some help in goal scoring. I know the last 2 games, they've really kind of found that, and I'm really happy about that, but I hope for sustained goal scoring. And if they can continue with this, like I'm going to talk about in a little bit more in depth, Evgeny Kuznetsov and getting these other players involved, Alex Ovechkin that engine is starting to turn. There's a lot of positive pieces on this team. Kuzi scores his 6th goal of the season to cut the Capitals deficit to 3-2. Kuznetsov has recorded 35 points, 13 goals, 22 assists in 42 career games against New Jersey, the most points he has against a single opponent. And that's that analytics that ties into it. And, sometimes you're like, well, why is this player playing here? Why is he playing there? And it's interesting, the analytics behind it. Why does one player play so well against a certain team, even though from year to year, it's different players, it's different systems? It's kind of interesting, the analytics behind it. Just taking a look at it, Alex Ovechkin earned the secondary assist on Carlson's power play goal, his 2nd assist of the game. Ovi has recorded 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists over his last 3 games. So Alex Ovechkin scoring goals here recently, but also getting points. Has recorded 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists over his last 3 games. That engine is starting to turn. He's not quite to peak performance again. It's like when you get into your car on a cold winter day and you start it and it doesn't run quite right. Just give it a while. It's going to warm up and then it's going to get going here. And sure enough, you're racing down the road. I think that is going to be the case for Alex Ovechkin as well, as I think that he is just starting to get going. A bit of a late start. And John Carlson, that was the fist pumping in the living room moment for me where I'm like, yes. And then I kind of held my fist up in the air a little bit too long and everyone's like looking at me. I'm like, okay, whatever. I was really pumped at that moment. That was the moment that it was even letting out just like a yes. John Carlson scores his 2nd goal of the season to tie the game. That was the moment that I thought it was going to change for the Capitals. I'm like, here we go. They're going to get back into it. So John Carlson scores his second goal of the season to tie the game 3-3. It marks John Carlson's 143rd career goal, leaving him one goal shy of tying Sergei Gonchar for the second most goals by a defenseman in franchise history. I know that John Carlson is a great blue liner. I think he will be revered as one of the best when he hangs up the skates at some point, eating up minutes, scoring, playing great defense. I think that John Carlson deserves more credit. He gets quite a bit of credit, but I think he even deserves more. He plays a huge role on the Capitals blue line, but it's not just the defensive aspect. He also, as evident this evening, gets involved in the scoring as well. So just, I mean, I'm going to say it. And you know, it's a funny thing to say by taking a look at the box score. I thought it was a pretty good game for the Capitals. I think that the wheel fell off towards the end. I know if you take a look at the score, 6-3, again, there were breakdowns, there were deficiencies. I'm not trying to say that, but the things that were promising for me is getting the goal scoring going. You take a look at the game the night before against the Pens, a great game, all things considered. And then the game tonight, there's good and bad in both of them, but I think that they need to seize the moment, and I think that they need to start making most of their opportunities because as I take a look at the NHL standings right now, they are in 5th place, the Capitals. So they are still in the hunt, kind of in the wild card range there. And you take a look at it. There is still some room to move up and down. The Flyers, the Islanders, the Hurricanes, for that matter, have not really ran away with it. The one team that I think will seal the deal for the Metro is the Rangers. So unless they face a substantial injury or something of that nature, I do think the Rangers have the Metro buttoned up a bit early. I get that. Is usually the All-Star break is when you can kind of start to see things come into focus, but the Capitals falling to the Devils, not ideal. I know, like I said, historically on back-to-backs, they usually play lights out in the second game of the back-to-back. There were things that I liked, obviously, and things that I didn't like, but the things that I liked was the great scoring, seeing Connor McMichael, seeing Kuzi, seeing John Carlson engaged, and showing some fight. But you started to see the frustration. You saw a Devils team that was just outworking the Capitals. That was one thing that was very apparent this evening, is that the Capitals got outworked. And I think that there's things that need to change. And a little bit later, I'll talk about Pacioretty, that, he was getting eased into the game, but, he kind of started some things on the wrong foot by going into the penalty box. It was a tripping call, but steps in the right direction and things I think that the Capitals need to work on between now and when they play the Hurricanes here coming up shortly. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about how Evgeny Kuznetsov gets a lot of grief. He gets it from me on occasion. He gets it from a lot of other people around the NHL, but he came into his own and had rather great game, all things considered. I'll talk about Kuzi coming up. It's almost the halfway point of the season. Capitals fans, let's make a statement about how great this team is. Regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And let me tell you something. I am not a guy that's generally that into fantasy sports, but when I found Sleeper, let me tell you something, I love it now. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Capitals fans. You could win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Evgeny Kuznetsov has been in a bit of a drought, suffices to say, in the goal scoring department. So it was refreshing and reassuring for me, and I got to imagine Evgeny Kuznetsov, for him to get a goal, find the back of the net, to get that positive momentum going. I think that ultimately, like, you take a look at Alex Ovechkin, you took a look at Anthony Mandel last season, that sometimes players, even NHL players, suffer with confidence issues. And I think that, in particular, Evgeny Kuznetsov, he's a guy that when he starts to hear the negative chatter, I think that kind of gets to him. And one of the things that I know about Evgeny Kuznetsov is he is not the kind of guy that's just happy, bringing home a big paycheck. He is the kind of guy that wants to play well. He wants to perform at a top rate. So, for a lot of players, they take a look at it and they're like, hey, I'm making a lot of money. I don't need to really worry about how I'm playing on the ice. I can just kind of mail it in. I ultimately don't think that that is the case for Evgeny Kuznetsov. When he struggles, I think that he's genuinely struggling. And we all hope that he can play better, because despite what I've said, despite what other people have said in the NHL, we all hope and wish nothing but the best for Evgeny Kuznetsov, because if he's scoring goals, if he's assisting on goals, that is only helping out Evgeny, and that's also helping out the Capitals. So to see him playing well tonight was a great thing for me. So just taking a look at his game in particular, Kuzi's been in a drought in the goal scoring department, but he broke out of that tonight and found the back of the net. Ovechkin passed it to Kuzi, and Kuzi drove the bouncing puck past Dawes. It's a pretty sweet goal, all things considered, as watching it there, is the puck was bouncing and he had to time it just right to knock it past Dawes. So it was a goal that required quite a bit of talent, a bit of coordination. Sometimes when you see them, they just slam it home. The puck was bouncing on the ice, and he had to time it just right, the hit, to make it past Dawes. I was rather impressed with the goal by Evgeny tonight. And the thing that I always like seeing, you can tell when he's feeling at peak confidence and happiness. He's doing the bird, briefly there after he scored the goal. So a really great game for Alex Ovechkin, a great game for Kuznetsov, as we're starting to see these players starting to hum along. Like I talked about, Evgeny Kuznetsov scoring that sixth goal this season was a big thing for him. He now has 35 points, 13 goals, 22 assists in 42 career games against the Devils. A really great thing. And not just that, also Kuznetsov recorded the primary assist on Carlson's power play goal. His second point of the game with an assist. Kuznetsov has passed Mike Gartner for the fifth most assists in franchise history. So he is coming into himself, and, he is making contributions. Can he have sustained success? That is my hope for Evgeny. As we know, he got scratched not too long ago, and when he came back, he was a changed man. But then all of a sudden, he kind of takes dips and dives. He is a player that's very hot and cold. He is a player that's had hot and cold seasons. I think back to when he first came to the Capitals from the KHL over there, that he played a big role on this team. And there was a lot of hype surrounding Evgeny Kuznetsov, and no one knew how to say his name correctly. Kuznetsov, when is he going to come here? And then when he finally came here, he impressed. He had that, but then, a couple of years later, he dived, and then he had a good year and bad years. So what I'm hoping for Evgeny Kuznetsov is sustained great play in the long term. I don't want this to be, a game or two here or there playing well. We want him to play well in the long term. And I have no reason to think that he won't. Again, he didn't just find the back of the net. He was also involved in getting that primary assist on Carlson's power play goal. So, just a great night for Evgeny Kuznetsov, and a key piece. And a lot of faith was entrusted as he was playing on the top line there. So, I like what I see from Kuzi, and I don't want to go ahead and say that he's going to be able to do it for the rest of the season. I hope that's the case. But as for this game tonight, I think he knocked it out of the park, getting a goal, getting involved with assists. That is all we want from Evgeny Kuznetsov. If he continued to do that on a night in and night out basis, I think he would be in the better graces of the Capitals. I think he would be in the better graces of the coaching staff and the people that talk about the NHL, because I think he is really a great dynamic player. Sometimes he just needs to put the work in. And in his own words, I could be the greatest player in the NHL if I wanted to be. We hope that he wants to. All right, so coming up here after the break, it was the debut of Max Pacioretty on the Capitals. How did he play? I'll talk about that coming up. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and more. And let me tell you something, guys. If you're watching a game, say it's a Commander, say it's a Ravens game, and you're not that into it, open the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. It makes watching the game that much more exciting. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it was the debut of Max Pacioretty and the Capitals. I know that he has been training with the team for quite some time, but it was a lot of hype. I was hyped. If you are a subscriber on YouTube, I put out a short video telling everyone how hyped I was to see Max Pacioretty for the potential of what could be, what might be, that we know that Max Pacioretty is that guy that scored 30 goals 6 different times in his career. We also know he had back-to-back seasons of Achilles issues, and it's been roughly 1 year since he last played a game. So a lot of question marks that surround Max Pacioretty, but I think that there is some pretty good upside. He is a good skater, despite the fact that he had those back-to-back Achilles issues. I thought he was moving rather well. I think that he was struggling in his first few minutes on the ice as he got kind of turned around and fell over. And then, of course, he was in the penalty box for that tripping call. But by the time he was done, and played a few shifts, I thought that he was doing a pretty good job. He did have extremely limited ice time, as you could expect, because they want to slowly coax Max Pacioretty back into action. They don't want to just put him in full on, because let's face it, he is, not the youngest guy on the team. And we know that he has had issues, major issues with Achilles the last 2 seasons, that it would be the right idea to kind of take it easy. But his shot is most impressive. I think that when he's fully engaged and ready to go, I think that he will make a big contribution on this team. And I talk about that 6 times 30 goals. Even if he could score 10 goals or 15 goals, that would really help the Capitals out a lot. I know the last 2 games in particular, the Capitals have scored a decent amount of goals, but before that, they kind of struggled in that department. There were a lot of low-scoring games and games that they only won by a goal or less, or, shootout, or, those kind of things. So to have a player that, at least in theory, has that potential is a positive thing for me. And I remember what kind of player he was even before he was on the Capitals, playing on the Canadiens, what he did for the Golden Knights. Briefly, he had that cup of coffee with the Hurricanes before he had that Achilles issue. That the potential is there. Pacioretty skated on the third line with Dylan Strome and Matthew Phillips. Matthew Phillips getting a longer look. And, the thing about Phillips as well, a good playmaker. I think that was a good matchup there with Strome and Matthew Phillips. He only skated 10 minutes and 20 seconds, 1 shot attempt, 2 hits, 1 block. Pretty much what you would expect from a player in their first game after missing roughly 1 year of ice time. But all things considered, pretty good. I mean, I think he did a pretty good job. It would have been better, of course, if he scored a goal. But in the brief snippet of time that I saw him playing in a real-time game tonight versus the Devils, I thought he played pretty well. And also, just to see his shot in real action at practice, the shot's there. You didn't see it real evident, unless you were really looking for it this evening. But his shot, he does have a pretty sweet shot, and that is why he's revered as one of the better ones. He was one of the top players playing for the Canadiens. He played a huge role for the Golden Knights. I think the Capitals have at least potentially a really good player in the future, for the remainder of this season, rather. And hopefully it doesn't, take too long for him to ramp up and be good to go. But I think that, it was a solid signing by Brian McClellan, $2 million plus $2 million more in incentives, a low risk move. And Brian McClellan historically generally has a good track record for finding players, that other teams, looked past. Think Conley, for example, or Devontae Smith-Pelly, those kind of things. And is Max Pacioretty one of those players? Potentially. And that's what we're hoping for. That is why the Capitals got him at such a cheap rate. And I think that he will really pay off well for the Capitals here in the short term. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's national 24/7 streaming channel. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.